Okay, this is a revision podcast for the muscular system. Just remember that we are doing the OCR syllabus, so we're looking at the muscular system. It's on paper 1, and again, there's no pictures with this. It's just an audio podcast, something to listen to, going through the main points within the muscular system. Okay, the first thing in the muscular system, a little bit like the skeletal system, is that you have to know the major muscles within the body. Again, you have to know every muscle, but you do need to know all the ones I'm going to very quickly talk about now. So again, locations and again spellings are important on this. Obviously I can't do spellings on an audio podcast. You have notes in your book to make sure you get the spellings right. So we start at the top of the shoulder. So top of the arm, the shoulder is the deltoid. Then coming down the arm, in the front part of the arm, we have the bicep. In the back part of the upper arm, we have the tricep. At the chest, we have the pectorals, the front. And then coming down to the abdominals, which is in your stomach and your torso. Again, don't write abs. And for all these muscles, you need to give the proper terms. You can't say pecs, you can't say abs. You must give the proper terminology. Coming down to the legs, at the front of the leg, we have, and the thigh, we have the quadriceps at the front. As I said, that's the upper part of the leg, the thigh. Behind that, at the back of the thigh, we've got the hamstrings. And going down to the lower leg at the back, we've got the gastrocnemius. Again, you may have called that your calf in your past, but we have to have the proper anatomical name. So you call that your gastrocnemius, spelled gastrocnemius, but you say gastrocnemius. And then coming again up the back in your backside, biggest muscle in the body is your gluteus maximus. Plural of that is your gluteals. Then in your back, we have the latissimus dorsi. And then at the top of the back, almost where your back meets your neck, which is this triangular shaped muscle you get if you train it, is called your trapezius. So they are the major muscles in the body that you need to know. Of course, each of those muscles causes a particular movement. So again, you need to be aware of what each muscle or each movement is caused by each muscle. Going back to the skeletal system, that muscles join on the skeleton via tendons. So a tendon joins a muscle to a bone and a joint, and when you flex the muscle, it pulls on the tendon, and then that joint moves to create movement. But you need to know what movement is created by each individual muscle. So we'll go through them one by one. If we start with the deltoid that we started with before, deltoid creates abduction at the shoulder, so the arm raising out to the side. An example of that would be a goalkeeper making a save in football. So deltoid is abduction at the shoulder. The biceps create flexion at the elbow. So again, example would be doing a bicep curl in the upward phase, or putting a guard up in boxing, where you're flexing the elbow. But again, you must be very specific with these examples. But bicep creates flexion at the elbow. Triceps create extension at the elbow. Best example I can think of would be a jab in boxing, where the arm extends out. You could also have shot put arm technique as you push the shot put forward. So the triceps is extension at the elbow. Going down to pectorals, create adduction at the shoulder across the chest. So again, bring your arms back to the midline of the body. An example of this would be maybe a rugby tackle when you're wrapping up a player. Your arms come in, or a hook in boxing, as you bring your arm back towards the midline of the body. So pectorals is adduction of the arm at the shoulder. Abdominals cause flexion and some rotation of the upper body at the hip. So again, if you think about the upward phase on a sit-up, so as you crunch forward, you lift the body up forward, you get flexion at the waist, is called by the abdominals. Coming down again, the quadriceps cause extension at the knee. Again, so as the leg extends and goes long, so maybe at the contact point of striking a ball in football, or the drive phase of running action, when you push your leg back and it goes straight, is caused by the quadriceps. so extension at the knee. The hamstrings do the opposite. They cause flexion at the knee. So again, in running action, when you have a high knee, your knee is bent, or when you're preparing to kick a football, as your leg goes back and the knee bends, that would be caused by the hamstrings. That's flexion at the knee. And down to then the bottom, you've got the gastrocnemius. Again, the lower leg, the back of the lower leg, causes plantar flexion of the ankle. So that's where you point your toes. P for plantar flexion. It's where your toes point. So again, we have in ballet, when you pirouette or go on point, or again, if you're striking a football for power and you point your toes, that would be plantar flexion caused by the gastrocnemius. Or anything where you're jumping and you're coming off your toes. So if you lay up in basketball as you jump and you push off your toes at the end and extend, that would be plantar flexion in the ankle too, caused by the gastrocnemius. And then coming back up, we have the latissimus dorsi. And the latissimus dorsi rotates the upper arm at the shoulders and extends the upper body. So again, you've got this idea of anything where you're going to extend the upper body. So think about, again, as you're lowering yourself back down on a sit-up. So again, abdominals cause the forward motion, flexion at the waist. Latissimus dorsi would lower you back down. Also, you get a little bit of that rotation of the arm. So again, on a cricket bowling action, to actually pull the ball, you get your latissimus dorsi will be working as well. And your trapezius would rotate the shoulder backwards. So that would be something like arm action in backstroke swimming, where the arm comes up and back and round to create rotation at the shoulder joint as the arm moves the shoulder backwards, is caused by your trapezius. So you'll notice throughout those examples, you have to be very specific about when in an action. In sport, a lot of different things are happening at once, and sometimes one muscle will cause one movement, and then very quickly another muscle will cause another movement. So you've got to be very specific about those examples that you use. We then move on for them. So we've now done all the names of the muscles, and we've done the muscles that the movements that are caused by each muscle. We then go on to what is called antagonistic muscle action. So a definition of an antagonistic muscle action is where two muscles work together to create movement. So muscles working together, a pair of muscles working together to create movement. One muscle will contract and the other one will relax. So if it says antagonistic, it wants you to say a pair of muscles working together to create movement. And then it wants to know which one is causing the movement and which one is relaxing. So one is contracting, one is relaxing. The one that is working is called the agonist. So the one in agony, the one that's actually doing the work, is called the agonist. Sometimes that's called the prime mover. That's the one that's creating the movement. So all the examples I've just given in the previous section, that's the agonist at that point. So the one that creates the movement is called the agonist. The one that is relaxing at the same time is called the antagonist, meaning anti-agonist. Antagonist, that's the one that's relaxing and allowing the movement to happen. So again, if you think of the most obvious pairs, so the most obvious pairs would be a bicep and a tricep are a pair. So as the bicep contracts and is the agonist, the tricep would relax and become the antagonist. But then maybe you'd switch over, that was beyond joint flexion. If you then extended the arm at the elbow, the tricep would become the agonist and the bicep would become the antagonist. You also have the similar thing with the hamstring and the quadricep in the upper leg. So as the quadricep contracts to cause extension of the knee, that is the agonist would be the quadricep. That's making the movement happen, and therefore the hamstring would be the antagonist. And then if you bent your knee, so again, if you did something where the knee bent, preparing to kick a football, bringing the leg back, the hamstrings would create that. They would be the agonist, therefore, and the quadriceps would then become the antagonist. So you just have to be aware the agonist is the one creating the movement. The antagonist is the muscle that is relaxing. And if it asks antagonistic, it means the pair of muscles working together to create movement. The only other example I've really seen asked in there could be a pair of muscles being the latissimus dorsi and the abdominals. But again, it's very rarely asked. They normally ask about the bicep and tricep, and the hamstring and quadricep would be the main pairs that they would ask about. Now, also within this, you have what are called fixators. So you've got your agonist and your antagonist, which are the two muscles working antagonistically. And then you have fixators. Fixators are muscles that assist by supporting and stabilizing the joint and the rest of the body. So let's give an example of a bicep curl again. So if I was going in the upward phase of a bicep curl, the agonist would be the bicep, the antagonist would be the tricep, and the fixator would be the trapezius. And what the trapezius would do, it would just stabilize the shoulder joint to allow that movement to happen. Often it could be the abdominals, which act as fixators to stabilize the upper body while your legs moving, so at the hip or the knee. Sometimes your gluteus maximus can also be fixators. So a fixator is a muscle that supports and stabilizes the joint and the rest of the body to allow that movement to happen. So that would cover also be an antagonistic pair. So just to recap again, antagonistic pairs is muscles working together to create movement. Agonist is the one creating the movement. The antagonist is the one relaxing. And a fixator is stabilizing the joint and the rest of the body. Okay, finally on this topic, we have the types of muscle contraction that happen in the body. So we mentioned very briefly that some muscles contract without you asking them to. So your heart is a muscle that beats automatically. Your diaphragm is a sheet of muscle that contracts under your lungs automatically without you asking it to. Involuntary, they just happen whether you want them to or not. And then obviously the muscles that wear them out in sport are muscles where your brain sends a signal to that muscle via a nerve. It tells it to contract, it pulls on the tendon and a movement's created. That's called a voluntary muscle, and we've mainly dealt with voluntary muscles here. Now there's just one more thing very briefly, and it's sort of, again, we haven't had questions on this for a while. There's two types of muscle contraction that you can have. There is an isotonic muscle contraction. So isotonic muscle contraction is where the muscle contracts and visible movement occurs. Something obviously moves. So in sport, this is most contractions are isotonic. Something moves. So running is an isotonic muscle contraction. Most sports, anything where there's movement. Swimming would be isotonic because body parts are moving. Playing football would be isotonic as body parts are moving. Going to the gym and lifting weights would be isotonic because body parts are moving. As long as actually there's visible movement, you can physically see something move. So that's isotonic. There's visible movement. There's millions of examples. A tennis serve, a table tennis shot, a badminton shot, a volleyball shot would all be isotonic because there's movement occurring and you can see it. The other type of contraction is an isometric muscle contraction, and this is where the muscle contracts, but there's no visible movement. So this doesn't happen as often in sport, but does still happen. So you imagine that the muscle is working, it's contracted, it's tensed, but there's no visible movement. So if you imagine doing a plank when we've done circuit training, where you go into the position on the lower arms and you have to hold your body straight, it's a core exercise for your core muscles, that would be an isometric contraction. The muscles would be working, but you wouldn't see anything move. A wall sit would be similar, so you sit with your legs 90 degrees against the wall sit, that would also be an isometric contraction. A rugby scrum, again, probably more in rugby union where they actually really, if the packs were roughly matched and they were really pushing hard but no one was moving, that would be an isometric contraction. You might get some of these in gymnastics as well when you're holding. Maybe you're doing a handstand and you're holding that position, you might get an isometric contraction there. The muscles work, but there's no visible movement. So that is really all you need to know about the muscular system. The names of the muscles, the movements that each muscle creates. You need to know about antagonistic pairs with agonists, antagonists and fixators. And then we've looked at muscle contractions with isotonic and isometric contractions. Hope it's been a help. There's loads of other podcasts on the GCSE area of the YouTube channel, so feel free to use them and obviously ask us any questions at school. See you later.